In 1986, Cobra stormed onto the screen with leather gloves, mirrored sunglasses, and a ruthless vision of justice. But nearly 40 years later, the cast behind that violence is almost unrecognizable. Fame gave way to broken marriages, sudden tragedies, and shocking losses. This is how the Cobra cast changed, then and now. Sylvester Stallone as Marion Cobretti. Sylvester Stallone was born on July 6, 1946, in New York City, United States. At 40 years old, he played Marion Cobra Cobretti, the cold, brutal, rule-breaking police officer, in Cobra, 1986. The role arrived at the peak of Stallone's power in Hollywood, when he was no longer just a star, but a figure shaping the tone, violence, and ideology of 1980s action cinema. Behind the steel physique, however, was a childhood marked by damage and humiliation. Stallone was born with medical complications that left him with partial facial paralysis, a slurred voice, and years of bullying that carved insecurity deep into his identity. Bodybuilding and writing became his survival mechanisms during that time. Rocky was not just a script. It was a psychological counterattack against a world that had written him off as broken. His marriages exposed the cost of living inside that pressure. His first marriage to Sasha Chak collapsed under fame and distance, followed by the devastating loss of his son Sage Stallone in 2012 from heart disease. Stallone later admitted it permanently changed him. His second marriage to Brigitte Nielsen burned fast and publicly, dissected by tabloids in real time. Even his later, more stable marriage to Jennifer Flavin endured visible fractures, proving that success never insulated him from personal grief. Today, Stallone is 80 years old, still active as an actor and producer through Balboa Productions and series like Tulsa King. With an estimated net worth of around $400 million, Stallone stands as a man who converted pain into power and isolation into legacy. Brigitte Nielsen as Ingrid. Brigitte Nielsen was born on July 15, 1963, in Rødovre, Denmark. At 23 years old, she played Ingrid, the hunted fashion model caught between desire and violence, in Cobra, 1986. At the time, Nielsen embodied Hollywood's Amazon archetype, towering, icy, and visually unforgettable. That sudden fame quickly became a trap. After Rocky IV and Cobra, Nielsen was increasingly defined by her private life rather than her performances. The label of tabloid spectacle followed her everywhere, narrowing her career into B-movies and reality television. Winning Razzie Awards for Cobra and Rocky IV did more than mock her acting. It reinforced a narrative she struggled for decades to escape. Her personal life was even more punishing. Nielsen married 5 times, with each relationship unraveling publicly. Her marriage to Sylvester Stallone became global entertainment, its collapse feeding a media frenzy that never let go. Later divorces, custody battles, and emotional instability pushed her toward alcohol addiction, bringing her to the edge of losing her children. Entering rehab in 2007 was not a publicity reset. It was a fight to stay alive. Now, Brigitte Nielsen is 63 years old, living mostly in Europe, appearing selectively on television and personal projects. After overcoming addiction and giving birth again in her mid-50s, she chose retreat over spectacle. Her estimated net worth of around $600,000 tells a harsher truth. Hollywood can elevate you overnight, but it rarely teaches you how to survive the fall. Brian Thompson as Night Slasher. Brian Thompson was born on August 28, 1959, in Ellensburg, Washington, United States. At 27 years old, he played Night Slasher, the feral, steel-jawed serial killer, in Cobra, 1986. Nearly silent and brutally physical, the role turned Thompson into a human weapon on screen, a face audiences feared even when he said nothing at all. That unnerving presence grew out of a controlled, solitary upbringing in rural Washington. Thompson trained rigorously, studying at Central Washington University and later earning an MFA in California. Sooner, his screen appearance in The Terminator, 1984, and later Dragonheart, 1996, reinforcing a harsh industry verdict. That same silence followed him into his private life. Thompson married twice and had 2 children. Yet years of location shooting, genre television, and emotional compartmentalization created distance that could not be repaired by stability alone. That invisibility mirrored his professional confinement. Despite respected work across the X-Files, multiple Star Trek series, and cult projects like Mortal Kombat, Annihilation, Thompson remained locked into antagonists and monsters. When he finally wrote and starred in The Expendables, 2014, it was not comedy for laughs. It was an actor confronting the cage built around him. Today, Brian Thompson is 67 years old, still working selectively as an actor, writer, and producer, sustained by genre audiences who never forgot him. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his career stands as a quiet warning. Hollywood remembers faces, not lives, and some identities are never allowed to escape the roles that created them. Art Lafleur as Captain Sears. Art Lafleur was born on September 9, 1943, in Gary, Indiana, United States. At 43 years old, he played Captain Sears, the worn, pragmatic police superior, in Cobra, 1986. His authority carried no heroics, only experience, fatigue, and the weight of command slowly collapsing. That realism came from a life lived outside the spotlight. Lafleur worked for years in sales, bars, and restaurants before turning to acting in his 30s, a decision that permanently shaped his career. Roles in Field of Dreams, 1989, as Chick Gandil in The Sandlot, 1993, as Babe Ruth proved his credibility, but also sealed him as a man trusted, not celebrated. What never wavered was his home. In 1981, Lafleur married Shelley M. Friedman, and their marriage lasted 43 uninterrupted years. Together they raised 2 children, building a life deliberately distant from Hollywood chaos. While roles came and went, that marriage remained his emotional spine. As the years passed, work continued, but the body did not cooperate. Lafleur was diagnosed with atypical Parkinson's disease, a slow, punishing illness that dismantled strength and coordination piece by piece. Acting became harder, then impossible, forcing a quiet withdrawal from a profession he had entered late and loved fiercely. Finally, he died on November 17, 2021, at the age of 78, after a 10-year battle with Parkinson's disease in Los Angeles. His death was not sudden. It was endured. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, he left behind no myth, only something rarer, a reputation for loyalty, endurance, and the kind of presence that holds a story together without ever demanding the spotlight. Val Avery as Chief Halliwell. Val Avery was born on July 14, 1924, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, United States. At 62 years old, he played Chief Halliwell, the hard-edged, no-nonsense police chief, in Cobra, 1986. The role reflected decades of screen authority, the kind earned not through stardom, but through relentless presence. That presence was rooted in a life shaped by inherited trauma. Born Cebu der Abrahamian to Armenian parents. Megerdich and Aruziag. Der Abrahamian, Avery grew up carrying the weight of genocide. His grandfather, a priest in Sebastia, was murdered during the Armenian genocide. After serving as a flight instructor in the U.S. Army Air Forces during World War II, Avery turned to acting, appearing in early films like The Magnificent Seven, 1960, and Requiem for a Heavyweight, 1962, roles steeped in quiet toughness. While his screen characters were often brutal, his private life followed a different rhythm. In 1953, Avery married actress Margot Stevenson, and their marriage endured for 56 years until his death. Together they raised 1 daughter, Margot Avery, herself an actress. Professionally, Avery accepted the cost of being indispensable but invisible. He appeared in over 100 films and more than 300 television episodes, moving seamlessly through projects like Papillon, The Amityville Horror, Donnie Brasco, and 5 films directed by John Cassavetes. Yet he was rarely celebrated, cast instead as cops, mobsters, bartenders, men whose authority filled scenes but never headlines. Sadly, he died on December 12, 2009, at the age of 85, in his home in Greenwich Village, New York City. He was cremated, and his ashes were given to his daughter, closing a life defined by endurance rather than spectacle. With an estimated net worth of around $1.5 million, Avery left behind a legacy built not on fame, but on the unglamorous labor of holding American cinema together from the edges. Lee Garlington as Nancy Stalk. Lee Garlington was born on July 20, 1953, in Teaneck, New Jersey, United States. At 33 years old, she played Nancy Stalk in Cobra, 1986. The role placed her inside a hyper-masculine action world, even as her career would later reveal far greater range than the film allowed. That adaptability came from a restless childhood. Garlington grew up moving constantly between Delaware, Illinois, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C., learning early how to adjust, observe, and disappear when necessary. Those instincts carried into a career spanning more than 180 roles, including Field of Dreams, 1989, and an early, now legendary near miss with Seinfeld, where she was originally cast as Jerry's girlfriend before the role was erased. As her professional life expanded, Garlington built a private one that stayed deliberately grounded. She married Howard Nugent, choosing a partner outside the entertainment industry. The marriage offered stability, in contrast to a career defined by short contracts, constant auditions, and characters that rarely returned. That contrast sharpened over time. Despite her visibility on shows like Friends, The Golden Girls, Everwood, and The West Wing, Garlington was repeatedly reset to zero, recognized, but never fully anchored. Even her Emmy-nominated performance in Broken 2018 arrived decades into a career built on persistence rather than momentum. Now, Lee Garlington is 73 years old, continuing to work selectively in television and film while remaining largely absent from Hollywood spectacle. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000, her story exposes a quieter truth. Longevity in acting often means surviving erasure, not conquering it, and learning to live with the roles that almost changed everything. David Rasche. As Dan. David Rasche was born on August 7, 1944, in St. Louis, Missouri, United States. At 42 years old, he played Dan in Cobra, 1986. Though a smaller role, it sat at a turning point in a career that would soon become synonymous with authority figures who sounded calm even when chaos was near. That calm had deep roots. Rasche grew up in a pastor's household, surrounded by sermons, discipline, and expectation, an upbringing that quietly trained him to speak with conviction. After studying at Elmhurst College and later theology and English at the University of Chicago, he pivoted toward performance, appearing in early film work like An Unmarried Woman, 1978, and Manhattan, 1979, roles that hinted at intelligence rather than spectacle. As his professional identity solidified, so did his private life. In 1979, Rasche married Heather Lupton, an acting teacher he met after moving to New York. Together, they raised 3 children, building a family life deliberately insulated from the volatility of the entertainment industry. That balance mattered when fame arrived in an unexpected form. Rasche became widely known as the deadpan lead of Sledgehammer, 1986 to 1988, a satire that mocked the very masculinity Cobra celebrated. Decades later, he re-emerged for a new generation as Carl Mueller on HBO's Succession, playing corporate power not as bombast, but as quiet menace. Proof that restraint, not volume, was his greatest weapon. Today, David Rasche is 82 years old, still respected as a stage, film, and television actor whose authority deepened with age. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, his career reveals a rare arc. A man shaped by faith and intellect who learned to weaponize stillness, and in doing so, outlasted louder stars. John Herzfeld as Cho. John Herzfeld was born on August 22, 1948, in Newark, New Jersey, United States. At 38 years old, he played Cho in Cobra, 1986, while also contributing creatively behind the scenes. The role was brief, but it symbolized his unusual position, one foot inside the frame, the other already shaping stories from behind the camera. That dual identity formed early. Raised in New Jersey by a father who adored film, theater, and ballet, Herzfeld was immersed in storytelling before he understood its power. After studying at the University of Miami, he gravitated toward writing and directing, gaining early recognition with ABC after-school specials like Stoned, 1980, which earned him a Daytime Emmy and revealed his interest in moral consequence rather than spectacle. As his creative ambitions expanded, his personal life entered a later, steadier phase. In 2010, Herzfeld married Rebecca Cheney, a producer who would become both his partner and collaborator. Their relationship blurred the line between marriage and creative alliance, particularly on projects like Reach Me, where Cheney's production work directly supported Herzfeld's vision. That partnership proved crucial as Herzfeld navigated the extremes of his career. After the commercial failure of Two of a Kind, he rebuilt his reputation through uncompromising television films, culminating in Don King, Only in America, 1997, which won him the Directors Guild of America Award and an Emmy nomination. Later films like 2 Days in the Valley and 15 Minutes continued his obsession with ambition, failure, and unrealized potential. Today, John Herzfeld is 78 years old, regarded less as an actor than as a filmmaker who survived both ridicule and acclaim. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, his legacy rests on persistence, the willingness to absorb public failure, retreat, and return sharper, guided by a marriage that functioned as both refuge and engine. Marco Rodriguez as Supermarket Killer. Marco Rodriguez was born on July 10, 1953, in Los Angeles, California, United States. At 33 years old, he played Supermarket Killer in Cobra, 1986. The role was brief but vicious, imprinting his face into the film's atmosphere of random urban violence. That intensity was rooted in a grounded upbringing. Raised in Los Angeles within a Mexican-American household, Rodriguez grew up navigating cultural duality rather than spectacle. After earning his degree at the University of Southern California, he trained under Jeff Corey and Jose Quintero and emerged first through the stage, most notably in Zoot Suit at the Mark Taper Forum and touring Europe with Luis Valdez's Teatro Campesino, experiences that shaped him as a disciplined ensemble actor rather than a star. As his professional life stabilized, his private life remained deliberately guarded. Rodriguez has never publicly disclosed the name of a spouse, nor confirmed a marriage, a silence that stands out in an industry built on exposure. Instead of visibility, he chose focus, channeling his emotional energy into teaching, mentoring, and community building rather than publicity. That choice defined the arc of his career. Rodriguez became a familiar supporting presence in films like $1 Million Baby, 2004, and Nightcrawler, 2014, trusted for authenticity but rarely centered. Parallel to acting, he founded Dejando Huellas, a bilingual drama outreach program for underserved Latino youth, quietly reshaping lives far from red carpets. Now, Marco Rodriguez is 73 years old, continuing to work selectively as an actor, educator, and community advocate. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his legacy is not measured by fame, but by continuity, the slow, deliberate decision to leave marks on people rather than headlines. Gregory Cruz as janitor. Gregory Cruz was born in the mid-1950s in Los Angeles, United States. At approximately 30 years old, he played the janitor in Cobra, 1986. The role was small and silent, yet symbolic. Another ordinary figure swallowed by a city portrayed as ruthless and disposable. That realism came from lived experience. Raised with Apache and Mexican heritage, Cruz worked multiple jobs before committing to acting, absorbing the rhythms of labor and survival. His theatrical foundation was rigorous, spanning El Teatro Campesino, the Mark Taper Forum, Berkeley Repertory Theater, and Denver Center Theater Company, where performance was craft, not fantasy. When it comes to his personal life, Cruz has kept strict boundaries. No publicly confirmed spouse or marriage has ever been disclosed, a pattern consistent with a man who built his identity on work rather than narrative. His emotional life, like many character actors, remained largely off-screen, protected, but also invisible. That invisibility echoed throughout his career. Cruz appeared steadily in television and film, earning respect in projects such as Saving Grace and later Mayans MC, while never breaking into leading roles. Even with a Drama Logue Award for his stage work, recognition arrived quietly, often after the curtain fell. In 2026, Gregory Cruz is around 70 years old, still respected within theater and television circles for his consistency and integrity. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000, his story reflects a hard truth of the industry. Some careers are built not on ascent, but on persistence and the dignity of staying. Nina Axelrod as waitress. Nina Axelrod was born on July 28, 1955, in New York City, United States. At 31 years old, she played the waitress in Cobra, 1986. The appearance was brief, yet it captured a moment when her on-screen career was already nearing a quiet pivot. That turn made sense given where she came from. Raised in New York as the daughter of celebrated screenwriter George Axelrod and Joan Axelrod, Nina grew up inside writers' rooms and rehearsal spaces, learning early how stories are shaped and abandoned. Her acting years included cult and genre titles like Motel Hell, 1980, and Firestarter, 1984, projects that brought visibility without permanence. As work ebbed and flowed, her personal life settled into something more enduring. In 1981, Axelrod married Robert Jaffe, an actor, writer, and producer. Together they raised their son, Taliesin Jaffe, who would later forge his own successful path as an actor and voice performer. While Nina's career shifted away from the camera, family became a constant rather than a casualty. That shift was not a retreat, but a reinvention. By the early 1990s, Axelrod transitioned into casting and teaching acting, influencing films and students from behind the scenes. Even her near miss with Blade Runner, she was considered for the role of Rachel, became emblematic of a career defined by proximity to major moments rather than ownership of them. Today, Nina Axelrod is 71 years old, working selectively as a casting director and drama teacher, far from Hollywood's spotlight by choice. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, her legacy rests less on screen time than on continuity, remaining inside the craft even after stepping out of the frame. Dion Monte as supermarket clerk. Dion Monte was born on April 7, 1967, in Washington, D.C., United States. At 19 years old, he played the supermarket clerk in Cobra, 1986. The role was small, but it placed him directly inside a cinematic lineage that would shape his future. That opportunity came from a childhood marked by strain. Raised by his mother Rosa in a single-parent household, Monte grew up under financial pressure before relocating to California as a teenager. Acting began as an outlet through school plays and community theater, a fragile path made real when his cousin Sylvester Stallone helped him secure his first professional work. Professionally, Monte carved out a modest but consistent niche. Beyond Cobra, He contributed to the Rocky and Rambo franchises, often working as a stand-in and stunt performer, labor that kept him near the action without the visibility of stardom. Even his name change, adopting Dion to avoid confusion, reflected a career shaped by necessity rather than ambition. In 2026, Paul Dion Monte is 59 years old, continuing to work intermittently in film while remaining closely connected to his family. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000, his story underscores a quieter truth of Hollywood. Sometimes survival matters more than a cent, and proximity to legacy becomes a life's work in itself. Roger Aaron Brown, as policeman. Number 2. Roger Aaron Brown was born on June 12, 1949 in Washington, D.C., United States. At 37 years old, he played policeman number 2 in Cobra, 1986. The role was small, but it placed him firmly inside the hard-edged police cinema of the 1980s that quietly defined his screen identity. That casting was no accident. Growing up in Washington, D.C., Brown developed a disciplined presence that later translated into authority on screen. He built a steady career as a character actor, often embodying law enforcement or command figures, with notable work in Star Trek, The Motion Picture, 1979, and Near Dark, 1987. These roles prepared audiences to trust him as a man who carried weight, even when the script gave him few lines. Away from the camera, however, his personal life followed a more fragile arc. Brown married Janet Mitsui in July 1987, and together they had one daughter, Tani. Their relationship endured for years before ending in divorce, a private rupture that unfolded far from the roles in which he so convincingly projected stability and control. Professionally, Brown's authority only deepened with time. He became widely recognized as Deputy Chief Joe Noland on the CBS drama The District, 2000 to 2004, a role that finally matched his gravitas with long-form storytelling. He also continued to work across film, television, and voice acting, contributing to projects like RoboCop 2, 1990, and voicing characters in Assassin's Creed 3 and Dying Light, a career defined by persistence rather than spectacle. Now, Roger Aaron Brown is 77 years old, remembered as a dependable pillar of American film and television rather than a headline star. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his legacy rests on endurance, a life spent playing men who held systems together, even as parts of his own quietly fell apart. Looking back at the Cobra, 1986, cast today, the contrast is striking. Some careers exploded into legend, others faded quietly into character work, illness, or personal loss. But every face helped shape the film's brutal, unforgettable tone. Time changed their paths, but it didn't erase their impact. So when you watch Cobra again, who do you see now? An action icon, a forgotten performer, or a life that took an unexpected turn? Tell us which cast member's journey surprised you the most, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more then and now deep dives into classic films.